I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chairwaves. My guest today is Allan Freed, an award-winning chair from New York, New York City.
New York.
New York, New York. Yay, I'm walking here. Which, by the way, New Yorkers really don't like it when tourists come and start like shouting that everywhere. It's not. That's not how you're going to endear yourselves if you come and visit New York City. Welcome, Allan. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be here.
So I always like to talk to people about their stories and about the things that ultimately led them to Vistage, but the various stops in their career. And you've got a really interesting genesis to your career. You worked in the music business, which is something that not a lot of us can say. I would love to hear how you ended up in the music business and what that taught you and the process of deciding that it was time to move on.
So, through a chance conversation with somebody in college, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be in the music business. I was a poor student. I won't even say a great, not a great student. And I was never going to go to a suit and tie kind of job. It was just, and I went and got an internship at Capitol Records. I lived in New York. My parents lived in Brooklyn, where I grew up, and I could get an internship, and I did. And this is in the in the late 80s. And my first day, Tina Turner was up there. Her Private Dancer, her comeback record was just out. And, we had Duran Duran and a bunch of other artists. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. There was like no doubt in my mind. I went back. I finished college. I came home. I got a job in the mailroom of one of the big talent agencies, ICM, which doesn't, I think is now part of one of the other big ones, William Morris or something like that. And got a job in the mailroom. And, God, I was delivering packages for, from there I became an assistant in the music department. It was mailroom to assistant was a common. That's how people got their foot in the door. I became an assistant in the music department. Learned I didn't want to be an agent. Got into music publishing, record companies, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and disco, and
disco, all of that,
all of it. Dance music, right? And it's extraordinary time, charmed life. Loved it. But while I was in it, I was never under any illusions. I was in my 20s, my 30s. You look around, there are not a lot of people in their 40s, less in their 50s. And, by the time you get into your late 50s, you're either, back office or running the company.
Right.
So I never, but, at some point, what was happening was online. What attracted me to the music business was when David Geffen owned Geffen Records, Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss had Island, and Clive was running Arista, and Chris Blackwell running out, Richard Branson. There were all these unique entrepreneurial-driven companies. And that was, like many industries, there was lots of attrition and acquisition. And I was falling out of love with it. And what was happening, online music was happening. I took an interest in that. I thought I might do my own startup. Met somebody who already had funding and needed somebody like me. And I became GM and helped them launch that and grow that. And then became chief operating officer at another company where much bigger play. We did like the first online video webcast with Vernon Reid and Living Color. lots of music, live music events, and record labels, and lots of online music content libraries. And then I started my own entertainment marketing business, and I was doing tour sponsorships and deals for mobile content deals for Britney Spears before the first text message was even here in the U.S. It was all
Hmm.
happening in Europe first. And I met a friend who used to be a bond trader, and he was a big fitness guy, and he was all of a sudden managing a gym. And I said, "What's going on here?" He's like, "Oh, I went to this coach, blah blah blah," and he like, I was like, "Give me his number." And I went to this guy who changed my life, um, really expecting to grow my business. And at some point, he said to me, "You should become a coach. You'd be really good at it." And I was like, "No, that's one of those things that people do when they don't know what they want to do, like real estate and social work, and
Or typically it's kind of like this is your last stop before you get put out to pasture, right? Like, it's like those who can't do teach, and.
And I just laugh. I laugh at my resistance and my biases.
But you actually went and took the step of actually going to school for it.
One day, I ran into someone at a coffee shop, and she said, she asked me how things were going in the music business. I was like, "Nothing's changed. Everything's great. Going to this coach." And she said, "Could I have his number for my husband? He's going through some career stuff." And she walked out, and I said, "I have always loved business and entrepreneurship. I started businesses in middle school and high school, and I've always loved personal development. I was never a big fiction reader, but big on business books, personal development books." And all of a sudden occurred is coaching is where they meet. I love to talk about this stuff anyway. Could I really get paid for it?
Hmm.
And I went to a program at NYU. I took the first class, and I was like, "I just want to do this. I don't know that I'll start a practice, but I could use it with my clients. I could use it anywhere." And I just never looked back.
That's amazing. I'm curious. So the music industry is, and of course you brought it up, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, plus disco, and and that is one of those businesses that, I mean, let's be honest, it's glamorous. There there is there is celebrity, there is excess, there is access to all kinds of people and all kinds of stuff. What what do you how did you remain grounded as a person, or how did you return to being grounded after you left the business? Because I imagine that while there were probably many days that just felt like another day in the office, there were probably days that felt more like an episode of Entourage, and you're living in a definite alternate sort of reality from the rest of us.
I think, yeah, there was I partied quite a bit and then stopped, um, and don't partake in that stuff anymore. And, while I was in it, I stopped. And,
Hmm.
I just saw what was around me, and was not, the path I was heading down was not going to be a good one. And I think also as I sort of started to work on myself more and more, I sort of asked myself questions about like, can I be sane and do this? And there are a lot of people that can, and some that can't. But certainly coming out of that business, doing a lot of spiritual work, recovery work, learning to meditate, getting certified as a meditation teacher, what I was learning as a coach, right, is coming back to, I would say, coming back to myself.
Uh, that's a great way of putting it. I like that a lot. What led you? So, what year was it about that you started coaching?
2005, 2006. It's 20 years. This.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, thank you.
20 years. That's a big achievement. So what ultimately led you to Vistage? How did that enter your
So
consciousness?
it entered my consciousness about, I think, three times. First was somebody I knew in my network. She mentioned that she spoke at this group of CEOs of Vistage. I had never heard of it. I took a look at the website, and I was like, these are all these like white middle-aged guys in suits. This isn't for me, and just like dismissed it. Like, and then another friend of mine who has a business mentioned he was in a Vistage group, and I took another look at it, and I was like, I wasn't swayed. And then I had done some executive leadership groups that I put together on my own, do an entrepreneurial group. It wasn't coming together. And I thought, let me go to that Vistage website and I'll poach some content and make it my own. The good thing about that is it caused me to dig deeper into the website and not make that sort of blanket assumption just based on and I was like, wow, what a great value proposition. Content. So unless I really want to start building something out on my own, like a company, so I reached out to them, right? Which you don't often hear. But I reached out to them, and from the first conversation, Dave Nast, who's now a chair but worked at Vistage at the time, was the recruiter. He's like, "This sounds like it'll be a good fit," and just started to meet a couple, like the best practice chair, Bob Duncan, who's since retired, here, and like we're from opposite worlds. He's like I'm a Jew from Brooklyn, New York. He was a Catholic deacon who lived upstate, and it was just like we just hit it off like really well, and it was just like there was that little bit of that feeling that Groucho Marx quote: "You don't want to be a member of a club."
Right.
Like he's like,
Any club that'll have you.
right, and he's like, we should move forward as this, and then I'm like, oh, do I really want to do this? But
Of course.
it was a great decision.
Uh, and that is actually a, I mean, not impossible, but a fairly unconventional path to becoming a Vistage chair. Generally, you guys come from one of two places. One place being that Vistage actively recruited you, which is a lot of people's story, and then there are people who were either recruit recruited to fill a specific group that was losing its chair.
Mm-hmm.
We've had people that were members of a group that lost the chair and they ended up stepping up into the role. But the idea that somebody or a member that said, I want to be a chair now, but the idea that you went and said, I've never been involved with this community, and I started digging deeper on the website and I realized that this might be where I belong. That is a different story, and that's really cool that that worked out for you.
Yeah, just that, it's like I filled out a form on a website, right? And
Yeah.
who knew uh, where the conversation would go? And the real decision that I made, like I'm going to do this, isn't until I went to the first training in San Diego, where they're headquartered, and understood what was involved. And I said to myself, God, I'm going to go for this, and I'm going to try and listen to directions for once in my life, because launching these groups is not for the weak. It's
No, it's not. And I would love to hear your experience in launching your first group, because this is a recurring theme on this podcast, where folks will often say that starting their first Vistage group was not only the hardest part of becoming a Vistage chair, but one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing they'd ever done in their whole career.
so there was an element where I say to people, if you told me earlier that year that you're going to be doing something where you're going to be cold calling, I would like you don't own everything I have right now, because I would have bet you everything that that's not going to happen.
Right.
We go to this training and they tell you what's involved, and they have statistics. Like if you reach out to this many people, this many will respond, and all that kind of sales pipeline
Yeah.
stuff. And I was just in that meeting, in that training, and I said, at some point, I said, they told us how hard it was, and I'm just going to go for it. And and I came back and I just started doing it. I think earlier than they even expect us to. And you make you make the call or you send the email, and that somebody says, "Oh, I'll meet with you," and then and you're like, "Oh my God, their scripts work." Uh, and then somebody else says, "Yeah, I'll come to your launch event." And it changes. Some people say yes and they don't show, and some people say yes and their plans change. But it's all built into their formula. And I just did it, and I was and continue to be really well networked. I built other businesses. I grew up in New York, knew a lot of people, so I had a slight advantage because I was coaching already.
Right.
Like when I first became a coach, my first clients were not the music business, the people I knew, because it becomes very hard for them to see you as somebody else
Hmm.
right
Correct.
right away. So when somebody comes a Vistage chair, if you're running a chemical company or public relations firm, and all of a sudden you say, "I'm doing this," it's hard. But because I've been coaching, I didn't have that full bias to overcome. So there were people I knew from my network that were interested in the group, since I was networking as well. And so I would say that if you need, I think they say 8 members to launch your group. I'd say 3 or 4 of them came from existing relationships.
That's wonderful.
Right.
And then smiling and dialing, or not so much.
No, you know what happened is I do it, and I might get 8 or 10 members, and Bob, who I mentioned, the best practice chair, is like, "Yeah, I'm like stuck at 8 members." He's like, "That's because you think you launched, and you can rest on your laurels." And it was like he was always direct, but it was always with love. And it was like, "Oh, I still need to be in build mode. I'm acting like the rest is going to come to me." And I just got back into that mode, and filled my group.
What's been for you, um, similar and different about your Vistage practice versus your coaching practice?
When I first started with Vistage, and it took me some time. Uh, I was like, "Oh, I'm a Vistage chair, and I need to treat these people differently than I do my coaching clients, and this and that." And it took me years to sort of realize, no, right? Like, like in the one-to-ones, that I'm a really good coach, and I think I was holding back a little, maybe out of deference or not wanting to lose them, not for good reason,
Right.
maybe fear, and but it's like I just need to get there, get into it with them, right? And um, so that was the difference, right? In the end, though, like it's really about the group, and I want. Um, I'll tell you a quick story, and it'll probably. I want the group. I want them to be the heroes of the story, right? In their own businesses, but with each other as well,
Sure.
right? So, a basketball coach never takes the shot, right?
It's true.
He's bringing out the talent of his players. He wants a team that works in sync, and that is, so in coaching where it's a one-on-one relationship, there's a lot of back and forth, and so that is, uh, that's the difference here. I would say, ultimately.
No, that's 100% true. I'm curious also, because I know that in addition um, uh, to being certified as a coach, you're also certified as a meditation instructor.
Mm-hmm.
How does how does the mindfulness aspect show up in your, not just in your group, but in your coaching practice? How do these things kind of intertwine for you?
I really want to be present, whether it's in a group meeting or one on one with a client or CEO member. And so it helps me to create space for them
Mm-hmm.
in my mind so that I am listening and I'm right there in it with them, as opposed to thinking I have a solution or planning the next question that I'm going to ask. And if that happens, we can really enable them to create something that might not have create something new, whether it's a project in their business, the next,
Sure.
their business 2.3.0, 2.0, or somebody who wants to make some big career change.
Without violating any confidentiality, because obviously Vistage operates by the Las Vegas rules. So without getting into anything that would violate anybody's trust, I would love to hear. I would love to hear a story about something that happened at one of your group meetings that was unforgettable, was a real breakthrough moment that that you felt great about being there for.
So I'm going to give you two, if that's okay. All right.
Fine,
So
give me two.
one is just a few months ago, I had a candidate, somebody was considering joining at a meeting, and he said after the meeting, he's like, "This was extraordinary. I can't believe what how much they remember about each other's situations, and that they were asking about things they said they would do previously, and um, uh, and that the person who had brought him to the meetings, started with this, but they really went behind that, brought this. It was real." And then when I spoke with this candidate a few days later, he said, I don't think I'm going to join. He said, because my help really needs to be, the help I really need is tactical. And I said, well, give me an example. And he gave me an example. And I said, well, that's exactly what we do. And he said, it sounds to me like perhaps you were a little, maybe there was a little bit too much intimacy, or it went a little too deep for you. It's like, maybe so. I, I was thrilled because it took me years to get my group there, where they go under the waterline, as we say. Are we talking about the real topic, issue, opportunity, decision, challenge at hand, or is it just a symptom, right? And they got behind it. So I it made me proud to hear that if he's not a fit, better to know it up front. If he's not willing to go deep,
Absolutely,
right? So that
absolutely.
the other one was with my, I think he was the youngest member of the group. He was a rock star, tech and SaaS businesses. He brought to the group a dilemma of whether he and his wife should have children, and they were going to freeze her eggs, and he had a fear that it was going to get in the way of his ambitions.
Okay,
And he processed it with a group, and they were all very encouraging um, that he should have children. And we spoke about his fears and stuff. And I think it was in December, this past December, he just had his second child. And I had lunch with him a few weeks ago, and he showed me something like some invitation he made, like some pottery thing to have other kids over to his apartment, and he loves being a father.
hmm
And he's like I said, he sold one of his businesses. Yeah,
what a wonderful story.
I'm going to look at what I'm doing is next. But he's like, I'm not. He said, if he says, I don't know, that I would be here with kids if it wasn't for the group. Now he credited the group with some really great business decisions and helping him, but I just think that's so significant. Um, and it was, it's not like it's a therapy session. It was just a decision, and he brought it, and he got what he needed. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my group for that. I'm proud of him for the decision he made, and the reward is just in seeing how, the quality of his life.
Allan, this has been a lot of fun talking to you, and I love the stories. And of course, you have a small business group and the Key Group in New York City. If folks have questions about your groups, about you, about whether or not parenthood is the right decision for them, what is the best way that people can get in touch with you?
They should call my agent. No.
Your people call my people.
Right. They can shoot me an email. Allan.Fried, ALLAN.FRIED, spelled like fried, at vistagechair.com.
Allan, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest. This was a lot of fun.
Likewise. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.